Number 12. Soviet Submarine. A Soviet-era submarine had been rusting away in the waters off Amsterdam for over a decade when a group of urban explorers decided to investigate in 2018. Bob Thyssen, who runs the YouTube channel Exploring the Unbeaten Path, filmed his journey inside after rowing out to the rusting ship in a dinghy. He found the vessel wide open and captured footage of its cramped, dust-covered interior, jam-packed with gauges and other equipment, Russian language instructions, and even photos of topless models on one of the walls. Thyssen reflected on his surroundings, mentioning how there would be no privacy or sunlight, and how he thinks he would get depressed in there, especially knowing he's a target to the enemy. Known as the Foxtrot B-80, the submarine was built in 1956. It eventually ended up in Amsterdam, where it sat for years as multiple owners failed to pay towing tariffs. The city wants the eyesore removed from its waters, but for now, the vessel is still there. Number 11. The Galaxy. Located in the Gulf of Thailand, the island of Koh Chang is home to an eerie abandoned resort with a decaying cruise ship docked along the shore. Dubbed the Galaxy, the 7-story, 70-bedroom vessel once functioned as an upscale hotel. During its heyday, the Koh Chang Grand Laguna Resort was a 5-star destination, but it closed out of nowhere for reasons that remain a mystery to this day, leaving behind the Galaxy, along with chalets, fishing boats, and several other fixtures of the former vacation site. During a visit to the property in 2017, travel blogger Messy Nessie Chick found that some parts of the defunct resort were unusually well maintained, while others had fallen into disrepair. She also noticed that there was some staff inside, including a security guard who let people explore the ghost ship in exchange for tips. Photographer Emily Ibarra captured photos of the vessel's rundown rooms, with stained carpets and furniture that's falling apart. It's clearly been a while since there was any electricity or running water, and the dark and dank vessel has been taken over by stray animals. In the office, there's a cabinet full of keys that was left open, as if the front desk employee had fled one day in a hurry, never to return. According to one Reddit user, the Galaxy was a cruise liner before it was repurposed into a floating boutique hotel. Locals reportedly called it the Ghost Ship, not only because it's abandoned, but because numerous people have tragically ended their own lives by jumping off it. Number 10. Rare World War II Tank. While hiking through northern England's Peak District in 2020, a group of British hikers known as Destination Discovery captured footage of a World War II-era tank. It was only after they posted the footage that they learned of the vehicle's importance. Earlier this year, British historian Mark Felton posted a response to the video identifying the tank as a rare Canadian-built Ram. Ottawa-based World War II historian Jeff Noakes confirmed and elaborated on Felton's findings, identifying the vehicle as a Ram 2 that was produced sometime between 1941 and 1943. It's a mid-production model, of which only 100 were ever made. Before the US government got involved in World War II, Canada sought to build a tank based on the American M3. By the time the production started, the US had entered the war and was producing the Sherman tank, which the Allies chose as their main cruiser tank for liberating France. Around 1,500 Canadian Rams were sent to England, where they were used for training and target practice. This is how the tank seen in the Destination Discovery video probably ended up in the field where it was found. Out of the 1,900 Rams that were built, less than 30 survive. They can be found in Canada, the UK, the Netherlands, and Australia. Number 9. British Airways flight S200P. During an afternoon stroll on Scotland's Irish Law Mountain last year, 39-year-old Pamela Aitken spotted large metal chunks along the hillside. She alerted the friend she was with, 54-year-old Catherine Gaffney, and the two took some photos and went to get a closer look at the site. The debris is believed to be from British Airways flight S200P, which crashed on April 21, 1948, with 20 people aboard. Everyone survived, but 13 were injured when the short-haul flight crashed into Irish Law Mountain and burst into flames while en route from London to Glasgow. An investigation determined that pilot error was to blame for the accident. Pamela was shocked at how much of the wreck remained still intact after so long. The hillside is known to be scattered with the plane's engines, landing gear, and parts of both wings. Number 8. USS Stickleback. Commissioned in 1945, the Balo-class U.S. Navy submarine USS Stickleback was named for its resemblance to the small, scaleless stickleback fish species. It patrolled in the Sea of Japan for just 2 days before being sent back to the States, as it looked as though the war was coming to an end. By then, the Americans had already bombed Hiroshima and Nagasaki. The sub's most notable achievement was the rescue of 19 survivors of a freighter that had sunk 10 days earlier. After supporting United Nations forces in the Korean War, the Stickleback returned to Pearl Harbor and spent the next 4 years being used in training exercises. During one such drill in May 1958, the submarine accidentally collided with the Navy destroyer USS Silverstein 20 miles off Oahu, sending it plunging 11,000 feet to the seafloor below. The crew were fine, but the ship was beyond repair. It was rediscovered in early 2020 by a private organization called the Lost 52 Project, which is dedicated to finding the 52 missing U.S. submarines that sank during World War II and 4 dating back to the Cold War. This was their 6th find, made by robotics and using sonar imaging technology. At the time of the discovery, the group said they hope to soon add more to their growing list. Where do you think the organization will find the rest of the missing submarines? Tell us in the comments below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 7. Mars Warship. Built during the 1560s, the Swedish warship Mars was the leading ship of King Eric XIV's fleet. Named after the Roman god of war, it had a reputation for being the world's fiercest warship. Measuring 230 feet long, it was also one of the largest warships of its time. In 1564, shortly after it was built, Mars caught fire, exploded, and sank during a battle in the Baltic Sea. Between 800 and 900 Swedish and German sailors died and descended to a watery grave, along with a treasure trove of gold and silver coins. A team of divers discovered the wreck in 2011 after spending years researching its possible location. It sits 246 feet beneath the waves. Researchers confirmed the ship's identity after noticing its unique cannons and several other features. A collection of silver coins minted by Eric XIV of Sweden further verified that the wreck is the Mars. National Geographic reported in 2014 that experts had identified it as the best preserved vessel of its kind, representing the first generation of Europe's big, 3-masted warships. Maritime archaeologist John Ronby described Mars as a missing link that is helping to fill the gap of knowledge among experts when it comes to 16th century warships. Raising the wreck would be expensive and risky. To avoid damaging the fragile artifacts, researchers have agreed to leave it on the seafloor and instead study it by scanning it and creating 3D reconstructions. In doing so, they hope to gain some insight into the final moments before the ship sank, which can help them better understand how warriors of the time period behaved in battle. Number 6. Red Army Tank. In 2015, workers discovered an abandoned Red Army tank in a swamp near the town of Sino, Belarus. The tank, which may date as far back as 1941, is what's called a KV-1 or Klimet Voroshilov 1 and was named after a Soviet Union marshal. When the Germans invaded in 1941, the KV-1 was the Soviet military's standard heavy tank. It was extremely effective against most German anti-tank weapons, thanks to its heavy armored plate. After sitting in the swamp for over 70 years, salvage crews worked together to recover the tank. During the process, which was captured on video, it was evident that the tank turret was upside down and separated from the chassis, a sign that the vehicle was riddled with electrical charges. It's unclear whether the tank was destroyed deliberately before it ended up in the mud, or if the damage occurred after the tank got stuck. There were also signs of possible fire damage to the chassis. The tank may have been used during the Battle of Sino during World War II, a conflict which involved around 2,250 tanks total. Number 5. HMS Endeavor. During his first voyage from 1768 to 1771, Captain James Cook commanded the British Royal Navy research vessel HMS Endeavor to Australia and New Zealand. From there, the ship returned to England, then spent the next 3 years as a cargo ship traveling to and from the Falkland Islands. After spending some time in private hands under its new name, Lord Sandwich, the ship was used to transport British troops during the American Revolution. It was deliberately scuttled in a blockade in the waters of Narragansett Bay, Rhode Island in 1778. In early 2022, a team of Australian explorers claimed that the wreck had been found in Newport Harbor. They said that they identified what remains of the hull and other key features of the ship, and are 100% positive that they found the Endeavor. American experts from the Rhode Island Marine Archaeology Project described the announcement as premature, arguing that while the Australian researchers could be correct, there's no indisputable data to prove the vessel's identity as the Endeavor. They said that many questions remain regarding the wreck's identity. For now, the disagreement remains unresolved. Number 4. Narco Tanks. In 2011, western central Mexico was plagued by violence as conflict erupted between warring drug cartels and within the Sinaloa cartel. The chaos was marked by a series of shootouts between local authorities and cartel gunmen in the state of Jalisco near the Zacatecas border. Within this hotspot of brutality, police found an abandoned so-called narco tank in the form of a radically modified 4 F-Series Super Duty truck. The vehicle was covered in makeshift steel armor plates and a metal cabin and was equipped with a gun turret, as well as a folding battering ram on the front bumper. It reportedly resembled 2 other narco tanks that were used by the Zetas and Gulf cartels. Some of these creatively upgraded vehicles can hold as many as 20 people and have advanced features like swiveling turrets and sniper peepholes. The BBC reported that the region's security forces often complained about the drug cartels being better armed than they were, and somehow, that seemed believable. Number 3. MAZ 543 Command Vehicle. The MAZ 543 Soviet Specialist Carrier Vehicle was designed during the early 1960s in what is now Belarus. It was used for transporting missile and artillery rocket systems during the Cold War. It entered into service in 1962 and was first revealed to the public in 1965 during the Moscow Red Square military parade. Powered by a tank engine, this all-wheel drive 8-wheeled vehicle was built for off-roading. The MAZ 543 was designed to carry up to 10 people in its rear section, along with a car crew consisting of 2 people. Photos of the MAZ 543 have periodically surfaced online, including in 2019 when images appeared of one that was found near the village of Nicolo Europino outside Moscow. It was replaced during the early 1990s by the MZKT 7930 Ostrolong, which entered service for the Russian army in 2000 and is still used in small numbers. Number 2. Whistler Train Wreck. Deep in the woods near the Chicamus River in Whistler, British Columbia, there's a stream of mangled, decaying, graffiti-covered boxcars that were destroyed in a 1956 wreck and subsequently abandoned. Train derailments were not uncommon back in the 1950s. However, little was known about this particular crash until recent years. According to Traveling Canucks, during transit, the boxcars would be constantly shifting and wobbling. The Whistler Question wrote in 2013, "The shifting could escalate until one car jumped the tracks, bringing all the other cars with it." At the time, the tracks where the wreck occurred were under construction, according to the Whistler Insider. In an interview with the publication, local forester Don McLaurin explained that the accident was likely a slow derailment on a curve, which caused the cars to gently fall over. It was easier to just move them out of the way than to remove them from the site, and that appears to be what the company did. There was no local newspaper, so the accident went unnoticed by the public. The boxcars, which now serve as a de facto outdoor art gallery, were then simply left as they were, with some still connected and others sitting on the edge of the valley, above the river. Although the site was once off limits to the public, it's now part of a popular hiking trail, open to exploration at one's own risk. And number 1. SS Jasm. On December 1st, 2003, a Bolivian cargo ship named the SS Jasm ran aground on the Wingate Reef off the coast of Sudan. To this day, nobody knows why it capsized. The 265-foot vessel is one of the largest shipwrecks that can be seen on Google Earth. For a while, the Jasm could be seen laying on its side. A travel company called Emperor Divers asked the Sudanese government to relocate the wreck to deeper waters, but at the time, there was an ongoing investigation to determine who was at fault for the crash. Since then, the vessel appears to have sunk almost entirely. The Norwegian-built ship was launched in 1961. It was owned by Al Ramzani Sea Transport of Qatar when it joined the main other wrecks in the area, which is popular among divers. Interestingly, very little information is available about the Jasm. It doesn't even appear to have its own Wikipedia page, leaving its history and the circumstances surrounding the wreck shrouded in mystery.
Number 10. The Giant's Graveyard at Malin Head. Ireland's most northerly point, the waters off Malin Head were part of a popular maritime navigation route during the World Wars. Consequently, the region became a graveyard for wartime wrecks. Included among the submerged vehicles is the HMS Audacious, the first British battleship that was lost in World War I. As a super dreadnought built for the Royal Navy, it was a beefed-up version of the 1906 dreadnought design that sparked a pre-war arms race between Britain and Germany. The Audacious was well armed, but it proved to be no match against the German-laid mine that blew it up in October 2014. The explosion sent the ship plunging 213 feet to the seabed below. Another major wreck that can be found near Mallin's Head is the SS Empire Heritage. Originally built as a British whaling ship, it was later converted into a tanker. It was carrying 16,000 tons of fuel and various military vehicles, including Sherman tanks and trucks, in September 1944 when it was struck by a German U-boat torpedo, sending it to its watery grave below. The wreck and the vehicle it took were rediscovered on the seafloor in 1995. They remain at the site today as an eerie reminder of a bygone era that saw countless countries in conflict with one another. Number 9. $1 Million Point. Many of the U.S. attacks against the Japanese during World War II were launched from the island of Espiritu Santo in the Republic of Vanuatu. When the war ended, American forces dumped tons of trash and dozens of vehicles into the waters off the island's coast, including bulldozers, tractors, forklifts, jeeps, and trucks. After a failed attempt to negotiate a deal with locals to buy the equipment, it was deemed more cost-effective to simply discard it rather than to haul it back to the U.S. Since then, the underwater mess has become a popular diving attraction, but some residents and others have misgivings about the decision to toss perfectly good operational vehicles into the ocean when they could have been donated to the community and put to good use. However, there may be more to the story. It's possible that the U.S. dumped the equipment due to a massive influx of low-cost vehicles into the market, which would have threatened the American economy, according to Cabinet magazine writer Thurston Clark. Either way, it seems like a shocking and sad sight based on Clark's article, which describes how locals watched as Navy Seabees drove the vehicles off the end of a purpose-built ramp. Military records from the time failed to convey the magnitude of the dumping, instead claiming that the site consists of a modest amount of ammunition and nothing else. This implies that the Americans perhaps knew that their decision to ditch the equipment was controversial and ethically questionable. Number 8. DDay Tanks. On June 6, 1944, 156,000 Allied troops stormed the coast of Normandy, France in a mission to free France from Nazi control. Famously known as D-Day, it was the largest seaborne invasion in history. The campaign was extremely successful, marking the beginning of the end of the war. But not everything went according to plan. That morning, a fleet of 29 amphibious tanks launched from Allied ships roughly 2.5 miles from shore. Known as duplex drive tanks or DD Shermans, the modified tanks were outfitted with flotation devices that enabled them to float. But they were only designed to withstand swells of up to 1 foot, and those in command had failed to think about the rough seas. The vehicles encountered 6-foot waves that they were not built to handle. The drivers did their best to reach dry land, and some came within 0.6 miles of the beach, but only 2 of the tanks actually made it. In 2000, a group of archaeologists explored the area's waters for the first time and found the submerged machines. They captured footage of the doomed vehicles sitting upright and on their side on the ocean floor, serving as an eerie yet emotional reminder of the lengths that soldiers go to for their country. Number 7. Train Graveyard. While mapping the ocean floor in 1985, diver Paul Helper discovered a sunken train graveyard in the Atlantic Ocean 5 miles off the Long Branch, New Jersey shore. He had no idea how the 2 submerged locomotives came to rest under 90 feet of water on the seafloor. The steam engines were identified as rare pre-Civil War Planet Class 222T models dating back to the 1850s. Planet Class 222T locomotives became obsolete shortly after they started being manufactured, so they were only made for a very short time. Although they were powerful for their 15-ton size, they were no match for the 35-ton steam engines that were also being made at the time, and which packed a much larger punch. Their 000 wheel layout was popular in Britain, but was a very rare design for an American train. Oddly, there are no records of the locomotives being built, lost, or dropped into the ocean. They may have fallen, or were perhaps deliberately pushed off a ship barge to prevent the vessel from capsizing in a storm. The trains are reportedly in remarkably good condition after sitting at the bottom of the Atlantic for a century and a half, according to the Daily Mail. But the New Jersey scuba diving website tells a different story, stating that the engineers' cabins and other wooden parts rotted away long ago, leaving just the wheels and boiler barrel behind. In fact, the website describes the trains as really not that great of a dive. In 2013, a member of the Philadelphia chapter of the Explorers Club named Dan Lieb teamed up with the New Jersey Museum of Transportation to figure out what, if anything, to do with the locomotives. Nothing seems to have come of it, and they remain on the seafloor today. What do you think should happen with these sunken locomotives? Tell us in the comments and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. Number 6. Tangal Shipwrecks. There's a collection of 15 submerged boats off the Brisbane, Australia coast that resembles some sort of huge maritime crash at first glance. But this was no accident. The Queensland, Australia government deliberately sunk the old dredging ships near Moreton Island between 1963 and 1984 to create a breakwall for small boats. Known as the Tangal wrecks, the vessels became a haven for reef fish and other marine life, and coral is starting to form in and around the submerged vessels. Over 100 fish species are found at the site, which is also visited by dolphins and dugongs. The Tangal wrecks are becoming increasingly popular among snorkelers and scuba divers, as images on social media capture more people's attention than ever before. Situated in crystal-clear tropical waters with high visibility, it's an ideal place for an underwater exploration. The wrecks are sometimes visible above the water during low tide. Moreton Island is one of the few inhabited islands near Brisbane, and it's the world's third-largest sand island. It lacks paved roads and is a haven for tourists, with the Tangal wrecks ranking as its top attraction. Number 5. British World War II vehicles. During World War II, German bombers struck a British merchant navy ship called the SS Thistlegorm, causing it to sink to the bottom of the Red Sea. The vessel had been built just a year earlier, and had only completed 3 successful voyages. Thistlegorm carried steel rails, aircraft parts, grain, rum, and other cargo throughout her short-lived career. She traveled to the US, Argentina, and the West Indies. The vessel departed Glasgow, Scotland for Alexandria, Egypt in 1941, loaded with armored vehicles, motorcycles, trucks, ammo, guns, radio equipment, aircraft and railway parts, and 2 train locomotives. A crash in the Suez Canal stopped Thistlegorm from passing through, so the ship docked at a safe anchorage off the Egyptian coast. The Germans suspected that Allied troops were hiding on the vessel, so they dispatched 2 bombers to find and destroy it. 2 bombs struck the ship, causing some of its ammunition cargo to explode. 9 people died as Thistlegorm sank to her watery grave. French explorer Jacques Cousteau rediscovered the site during the 1950s. It was soon forgotten about until the early 1990s, when the coastal city of Sharm el-Sheikh opened it to divers. The section that was blown off the 420-foot-long ship during the attack created a convenient opening that visitors can use for easy access to the inside, which still contains most of the cargo, including the vehicles. Number 4. Papua New Guinea Tank Graveyard. A pair of World War II-era Japanese tanks sat just 13 feet beneath the waves in the waters off Papua New Guinea for 60 years before they were finally rediscovered in 2010. Each vehicle weighs around 15 tons and is equipped with a cannon and 2 machine guns. They sat untouched in Makeda Harbor until Swiss diver Franco Banfi photographed them following their discovery. Tank warfare turned the war in favor of the Allies by giving them an upper hand in several key battles throughout the conflict, including in the South Pacific. The New Guinea campaign lasted from 1942 until the very end of the war in 1945. It started when the Empire of Japan invaded the Australian territories of Papua and New Guinea. The Allies swiftly retaliated and successfully drove the Japanese out of the region. Japan suffered heavy losses and ultimately came out on the losing end of the campaign. While actual combat played a role in the defeat, the greatest suffering resulted from a naval blockade that kept food and medical supplies from reaching the Japanese soldiers who were stationed in the area. Number 3. Chuuk Lagoon Vehicle Graveyard. At the bottom of Chuuk Lagoon in the Micronesian waters of the South Pacific, there's an eerie graveyard containing a World War II-era ghost fleet of Imperial Japanese ships, planes, and tanks. The vehicle sank in February 1944 during a massive air and sea attack that the U.S. Navy launched against the Japanese, known as Operation Hailstorm. It saw the destruction of 270 planes and 45 marine vessels. Japan forged a friendship with Micronesia during the late 19th century when Japanese sailors were first welcomed there. After World War I, the League of Nations revoked Germany's possession of the region and handed jurisdiction over to Japan, which proceeded to turn the islands into a fortified stronghold. Today, the sunken vehicle graveyard at Chuuk Lagoon, formerly known as Truk Lagoon, is a popular diving site. The most experienced explorers often spot things they've never seen before, even after making a dozen or so trips to the site. In addition to the dozens of vehicles to be found there, there's a plethora of everyday objects, including medicine bottles, plates, and shoes, as well as a myriad of military items such as battery guns, gas masks, and ammunition. Number 2. Military Museum. Sometimes vehicles get into accidents and sink, but they're also submerged on purpose for a number of reasons. In 2019, Jordanian authorities lowered 19 decommissioned military vehicles into the Red Sea in hopes of attracting tourists to the nearby resort city of Aqaba. The collection of drowned hardware includes tanks, an ambulance, a military crane, a troop carrier, a combat helicopter, an anti-aircraft battery, and several guns. They're arranged in a tactical formation along a coral reef 92 feet underwater. The project was the brainchild of the Aqaba Special Economic Zone Authority, ASEZA, which has turned to wreck diving in recent years as a way to draw visitors and their money. In fact, most of the wrecks around Aqaba were sunk on purpose. The tradition of deliberately scuttling vehicles also stems from the Jordanian royal family's passion for diving, which goes back generations. In 1985, the late King Abdullah ordered the sinking of a Spanish cargo vessel called the Cedar Pride. 3 years earlier, an accident had blasted a hole in the ship, leaving a half-submerged eyesore until the king decided it belonged on the sea bottom. An anti-aircraft tank became the second intentionally placed wreck off Aqaba in 1999. There are also a few sunken airplanes, a landing boat, and a crane barge. So if exploring waterlogged vehicles is your thing, Aqaba might be your type of place. Number 1. Saipan Wrecks. Saipan is a commonwealth of the US and the largest of the Mariana Islands. It's located a world away in the Western Pacific, roughly 5,900 miles from the American mainland. It's here that a brutal, weeks-long battle between US and Japanese forces known as the Battle of Saipan took place from June 15th to July 9th, 1944. The skirmish ended with an American victory and the capture of the island from the Japanese. There are numerous historic American and Japanese wrecks off the coast of Saipan, including several Sherman M4 tanks that sit in roughly 10 feet of water in the waters off Chalan Kanoa Beach. The tanks are remarkably intact for their age and are a diving hotspot among tourists. There are also 2 sunken Japanese planes, 2 American planes, a handful of merchant ships, some landing vehicles, and other submerged machinery around the island. Divers can explore the submerged vehicles, including the Japanese naval ship Shoan Maru, which sits roughly 30 feet beneath the waves.
11. Folding Road. We know the Netherlands for its extremely low elevation in some places, with the lowest points dipping to 23 feet, 7 meters below sea level. It also gets a lot of rain. The ground is soft in a lot of places, often making it difficult for trains and other heavy vehicles to travel on. It's a tough problem to get around. Trains risk being cancelled or delayed, or ending up in danger. The Dutch military has its own unique ways of dealing with this problem. For example, the Royal Dutch Army of Engineers lays down a mat-like material called a folding road. They then lay this on the ground to make it easier for heavy vehicles to travel without sinking and getting stuck. The folding road is laid down and picked up by a device called the Vouwstrapengerät, or the folding road machine. Besides helping the Dutch navigate over the soggy ground, it's used by various militaries for traveling on snowy, sandy, swampy, and other soft terrains. This enables forces to create bypasses, travel along riverbanks, and even set up supply points in otherwise impassable areas. 10. HighFlying Hoverboard. During France's Bastille Day celebrations in 2019, inventor Frankie Zapata blasted toward the sky on his newly created high-flying hoverboard. The contraption fascinated the French president, Emmanuel Macron. He tweeted a video of the demonstration, along with a caption suggesting that the device might come in handy someday for the French military. In the post, Macron wrote, "Proud of our army, modern and innovative." Zapata's invention, known as the Flyboard Air, can soar at speeds of up to 118 miles per hour, 190 kilometers per hour. The machine's official website describes it as mixing the design of a drone with a racing car, and as the most practical means of transport for short distances, with a top-of-the-line stabilization system and autonomous capabilities. But it has yet to be implemented into official military use. 9. Squid Camouflage. As infrared vision systems become increasingly common, traditional camouflage is losing its effectiveness. To combat this growing problem, scientists at the University of California have been working in recent years to develop an infrared coating called invisibility patches. They're made from a structural protein called reflectin. This enables some animals, including common squids and certain octopus species, to change their skin color and reflectivity. The team that created the invisibility patches used reflectin that was grown in a bacteria culture. In 2015, a team of scientists conducted the first ever genome analysis of an octopus. The findings revealed several unique features, including some of which likely played a role in the evolution of this adaptive camouflage trait. Developers are likely years away from turning the invention into a practical military product. But they're off to a good start, and the future of reflecting is promising, especially because it functions along the same wavelengths as night vision systems. It would help improve camouflage for stealth operations and make it more difficult for enemies to detect troops in the dark. 8. Pocket-sized surveillance drone. Military technology is constantly advancing and improving. Because of this, there's a pocket-sized drone that's capable of performing sophisticated intelligence, surveillance, and reconnaissance missions in combat. Known as the Teledyne FLIR Black Hornet 3, the system comes as a pair of drones, one for daytime and another for use at night. Each drone measures just 6 inches, 15.2 centimeters long, and can fit on a soldier's utility belt. Besides being small and incredibly light, they're nearly silent in flight, making them extremely difficult for the enemy to detect. They can fly for up to 25 minutes at a time. Designed and built in Norway, the Black Hornet 3 transmits live video and images to the operator and is available to qualified military and civilian buyers. As of 2019, the 3rd Brigade Combat Team of the US Army's 82nd Airborne Division already had an FLIR Black Hornet 3 system. At some point, the Army hopes to issue a pair of drones to every one of its soldiers. Do you think civilians will ever be able to own a pair of these drones? 7. Unmanned Submarine Hunter. In recent years, some countries have made it a priority to develop quieter submarines that can travel close to the shore undetected. Advancing technology, the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, launched a new program. It's called the Anti-Submarine Warfare Continuous Trail Unmanned Vessel, ACTUV. They also call the program the Sea Hunter. The program's vision is to create an unmanned aquatic drone, one that's capable of traveling through thousands of miles of open sea for months at a time without a single operator on board. Its purpose is to hunt enemy submarines, navigating through narrow channels and shipping traffic using sonar, radar, and other systems that can get the job done with no crew. Open water testing of the technology began in 2016. 2 years later, DARPA announced the successful completion of the program. At that point, they handed the prototype vehicle over to the Office of Naval Research for further development. DARPA Program Manager Alexander Wallen praised the transition between agencies as a significant milestone toward the development of unmanned submarine hunters. Without a doubt, this type of marine vessel would come in handy for the US military, given Russia's recent ambitions to replace its outdated naval submarine fleet with newer and better vehicles. These new Russian subs can carry highly destructive nuclear weapons. But if Russia has a similar project to the Sea Hunter up its sleeve, it could put the US at a great disadvantage in submarine warfare. 6. Enhanced Night Vision Goggle Binocular. Late last year, the US Army announced it had awarded a $100 million contract to L3Harris Technologies for the development and production of the Enhanced Night Vision Goggle Binocular (ENVG-B) system. A press release from the company states that the system delivers imagery and data from the battlefield directly to the soldier's eye. It will also enhance situational awareness, mobility, survivability, and lethality. Simply put, the technology will enable troops to shoot around corners and from the hip. L3Harris Technologies equipped the system with better thermal imaging capabilities and depth perception than past versions. L3Harris Integrated Vision Solutions President Lynn Bolengia said that the soldier's ability to identify, assess, and engage a target with speed and accuracy will be unmatched with the ENVG-B system. She describes the technology as game-changing and as the most advanced combat-ready situational awareness goggle in existence today. During the final testing phase, Deputy Commander of Army Futures Command Lieutenant General James Richardson told Congress that the new goggles have dramatically improved marksmanship. The first forces to use the system were an armored brigade combat team that was deployed to South Korea. Would you rather own night vision goggles or a tiny drone? Let us know in the comment section below and hit that subscribe button while you're at it. 5. Advancing satellite technology. There are countless commercial and government satellites orbiting the globe, hundreds and even thousands of miles above the Earth's surface. They need to be this far away to effectively perform various meteorology, national security, and communication services. But the distance is extremely inconvenient when something goes wrong. The distance creates an enormous problem when a satellite needs to be inspected, diagnosed, repaired, or upgraded. For this reason, when a satellite is launched into space, it's loaded with as much fuel as it can carry and as many backup systems as it can accommodate. To address the growing number of satellites with obsolete payloads, DARPA launched the Robotic Servicing of Geosynchronous Satellites, or RSGS program. One of the program's goals is to establish a robotic servicing vehicle that can attend to ailing satellites. Another DARPA program launched jointly with Northrop Grumman and Raytheon seeks to enhance national security. The program developed technology that will seek and hunt an adversary satellite. In the best case scenario, simple physics will enable the DARPA-created satellite to destroy the enemy's device over several weeks. The satellite does this by reflecting a harmful sunbeam directly on it. The heat would cause the enemy's satellite to either combust or fall out of orbit. 4. Self-steering bullets. The technology that's currently available to them, making it especially difficult to hit targets in challenging conditions like high winds and dusty terrain, limits even the most skilled snipers. And any shot that misses its mark puts the marksman and his fellow troops at risk. A missed shot reveals their location and possibly exposes them to enemy fire. So, one of the US military's goals is to enable faster and more accurate engagement of sniper targets. In 2011, DARPA collaborated with military contractor Teledyne Technologies and ammunition manufacturer Orbital ATK on the X-Acto project. This helped them to develop the first ever guided small caliber bullet. The project's developers have avoided going into too much detail about exactly how the bullet works, but they revealed that the system tracks and delivers the projectile to the target using a real-time guidance system and the maneuverability of the bullet itself. The nose and tail of the .50 caliber bullet contain tiny optical sensors, enabling it to rapidly change course in mid-air. With a system this advanced, even an amateur shooter could theoretically hit moving targets with ease. Sudden environmental changes, such as a gust of wind, would not interfere with the shot, given the bullet's course-correcting abilities. This new technology supersedes current state-of-the-art sniper systems and enhances a sniper's day and nighttime range. Although the system has not yet officially entered service, the future of the X-Acto project is promising. DARPA revealed in a 2018 press release that to date, the smart bullets have passed their most advanced live fire tests. 3. Every ship in an aircraft carrier. Ever since World War II, the US Navy has imagined a day when fixed-wing aircraft can vertically launch from and land on any ship deck. That dream could soon become a reality, thanks to DARPA's Tactically Exploited Reconnaissance Mode, or TERN program, which was launched in 2013. According to DARPA's official website, TERN is an advanced technology development program that seeks to design, develop, and show a medium-altitude, long-endurance unmanned aircraft system and related technologies that enable future launch, recovery, and operations from small ships. In 2017, Signal magazine reported DARPA had developed a successful prototype vehicle. Using a pair of nose-mounted counter-rotating propellers, the unmanned aerial vehicle can launch vertically and hover. Then it transitions to high-speed horizontal flight. The aircraft does this by shifting the propellers to propulsion mode, causing air to be pushed over its large fixed-wing surfaces. The TERN looks like an aircraft sitting on its tail at first glance, and that's what it essentially is. Besides its takeoff and flight capabilities, designers equipped the TERN with a radar-based automated landing system. 2. The next-generation squad weapon. If all goes according to plan, the US Army's newest rifle, known as the Next Generation Squad Weapon, will come equipped with technologies that are customarily used in other products like iPhones and tanks. The weapon will arm ground troops and infantry, combat soldiers, and will possess features that nobody has ever seen before in the weapons industry. These highly advanced features include facial recognition, target tracking, and hydrophobic or water-resistant lens coatings. One of the two next-generation squad weapons that's being developed, known as the XM5, will replace the M4A1 carbine. It's an updated version of the M16 that was introduced into the military in 1965. The other, known as the XM250, will replace the M249 squad automatic weapon. The M249 automatic weapon first entered service during the late 1980s. Warfare has changed drastically since those times. One of the military's goals with the next generation squad weapon is to develop a ballistic computer that can predict a bullet's exact impact point. The Army also plans for the weapon to have a 1-second boot-up time and wireless connectivity capabilities. This is the first time in 65 years that the Army will finally replace its individual rifle, its squad machine gun. It will also replace the caliber and optics of both weapons according to Popular Mechanics. A spokesperson recently announced that the Army has awarded 2 multi-billion-dollar contracts to Sig Sauer to develop and manufacture both of the next-generation squad weapons. Sig Sauer has scheduled the first shipment of weapons to be delivered to the Army sometime late next year. 1. Psychedelic Camouflage. As the next item on today's list proves, some of the wildest military technology that ever existed wasn't super advanced. Rather, it was the simple yet ingenious nature of these inventions that made them even more impressive. Starting in the early 20th century, the British occasionally painted their warships in a razzle-dazzle, a type of psychedelic, brightly colored pattern. The paint job made targets visually confusing rather than hiding them, as concealment technology for warships didn't yet exist. Besides featuring wild colors, razzle-dazzle consisted of contrasting lines and shapes going in various directions. This made it difficult for an enemy to figure out important details, such as the type of vessel, its size, how fast it was going, and in what direction. Each razzle-dazzle ship had a unique pattern and color scheme. One featured red, grey, black, and white angular shapes. Another had more curved shapes in blue, black, and white. There was also a zebra print ship, and one that was painted like a brick wall. Although we can credit the Brits with starting the razzle-dazzle trend, the Americans also used it. In 1904, the US Navy launched the USS Nebraska, which had a contrasting chevron pattern on its hull and smokestacks. The Navy eventually covered a dozen warships in crazy patterns and colors. Razzle-dazzle reached its peak popularity during World War I, especially among the British Royal Navy. One newspaper reporter described the radically patterned warships as a flock of seagoing Easter eggs, while another referred to them as floating cubist paintings. Today, only a few of these eye-popping ships survive. Which military tech did you find the most interesting? Let us know in the comments, and remember to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. See you again soon.